Everyone, I'm Luke.
And I'm Max.
Welcome back to Upside Down Thoughts, Episode 3, the Echo Park Automotive Grand Prix from the Circuit of the Americas Road Course. So, um, obviously qualifying will start there as usual. No surprise, Tyler Reddick taking the pole position. Bit of a surprise with Bubba Wallace on his outside, not to be known too good at the road courses, but we definitely see some improvement in that qualifying position.
Yeah, absolute stolen front row by the Toyotas. You said it already, but it's kind of a surprise to see Bubba Wallace up there. He never has the speed at the road courses like he did this weekend. I don't know if he's ever had a top 10 start at a road course, and here he was on the pole row with his teammate. So he had said in previous interviews on Saturday after taking his spot to start second that he would be yielding to Tyler Reddick on Sunday to start the race. So he knew he was starting second and that he would be falling back to second, but he was super happy with qualifying there. And that takes us even further through the lineup, where starting fourth, you got Carson Hocevar, who, after a very controversial week at Atlanta, starts fourth, and Daniel Suarez starting fifth after a tough week for him in Atlanta. And then your road course ringers, SVG, Ross Chastain, AJ Allmendinger, all in the top 12 as well.
Right on. So now qualifying, no surprises except for the Bubba Wallace front row, which is also always good. SVG always getting his highest qualifying position, obviously at the road course of the season. So good stuff there. Now moving into the race weekend. Obviously we had a track change, cut some of the corners out that were unnecessary, and also we had a track limits change in turn 5, which if you don't know where that is, that's where the big painted flag is on the track. So if you were a little confused and saw some people cutting corners in that area, there are no track limits on that corner. So we'll get more about the track changes, but I was very pleased.
Yeah, it was a little confusing for NASCAR because some drivers actually weren't aware that there was no track limit in turn 5, as AJ Allmendinger came over the radio about a quarter way through the race. I believe it was about halfway through the first stage, saying NASCAR never told us that there was no track limit in turn 5. But once all the drivers were aware, it made the entry into turn 6 a lot faster and a lot more clean compared to how it started the race. But anyway, moving on from there, you mentioned the new track configuration, basically cutting off half the track of the F1 part of the track. No more straightaway down into the hairpin, straightaway after the hairpin. You're going straight into the ups and downs after going through the S's and hitting a left-hander there. And the ups and downs bring you back to the start-finish line as the previous course or configuration had previously. But going on from there on the track differences, I'll let you take it into turn 1 for the start of the race.
All right, so turn 1, obviously that's the turn where you go up, and then you have that super hard left-hand turn, and what do you know? Off the start, Ross Chastain misses his braking point and basically just pile drives Elliott, spins him out, takes Hamlin, Todd Gilliland got involved with it a little bit, and we saw Ty Gibbs kind of bunny hop over Hamlin's car and give Hamlin damage right off the start. So, I would say I'm surprised, but I'm really not. That's kind of something you see. Usually, one guy kind of just sends it in there and takes out, 3 or 4 cars. But, yeah, not really surprising for me.
Yeah, I don't really have a huge surprise there either. They fan out 4 or 5 wide going up into a hairpin turn 1. It's blind too. You already mentioned that it's uphill. So fanning out 4 or 5 wide there, you're almost asking for a spin, especially firing it up the inside. You're not going to be able to make that corner. You got 4 cars on the outside, you trying to cut the corner wide and exit with speed. So in my opinion, Chastain didn't really have anywhere to go there, but he's just trying to kind of throw it in there, see if he can beat and bang, maybe pick up 4 or 5 spots, shift some things around, which he definitely did. Probably caused a little more havoc than he wanted to, leaving Hamlin and Gibbs with the big damage. Hamlin already missing his front right fender after the first turn of the race on a 95-lap race. But besides that, they got through, I believe, the rest of lap 1 and the few after that cleanly.
Yeah, and obviously it sucks for Chase. He started up there in the top 5 and basically worked the entire way to get himself back into the top 10. But we'll get into that a little bit later down the line. And not too much further after that on, lap 4, we had Ty Dillon kind of run Cindric um, off in the corner, and, Cindric just let his tempers get the best of him, and he right rear hooked him intentionally. Obviously, Cindric was penalized after no driver points, just a fine. But and I understand, Ty Dillon is first year back in the Cup Series since 2022, and hasn't ran in Coda in a while. But you got to give him a little bit of break. He didn't cause any damage to Cindric, and Cindric just, like I said, let his tempers get the best of him there.
They're both running in the back. You're both running outside the top 25, 26, whatever it is, and Cindric gets run a little wide, and I don't see any reason for him to come back and tag Ty. These things are dangerous. He's lucky that it's at a lower speed. And I say a lower speed, and exiting that corner, you're still doing 60, 70 miles an hour compared to, whether it's Elliott hooking Hamlin at Charlotte last year in the 600, or if it's even, Wallace getting Larson, I believe 2 years ago in the playoffs, and ended up hurting one of his Toyota teammates in Chris Bell, who was in the playoffs. They're dangerous situations. Denny said this after he got right hooked, but it doesn't even come down to just being almost like a baby move on the driver's part, or just cheap, as Harvick said, talking about Cindric doing it. But it's dangerous, and it's you gotta think more before you're doing this, realizing that you're doing this at 70 miles an hour in a race car, and it can be a lot more dangerous if you're doing it at 170. If he does that at Talladega or wherever, it's a very different story. So I think Cindric kind of got lucky with this penalty. I don't know if he said this, but there was also a 50 point penalty assessed later uh,
Mm.
during this week as well. So he got a 50K fine along with his 50-point deduction. So I think NASCAR definitely got that right. Do I think he also should have been suspended? Possibly. I'm not going to really throw my hand in there. That's more of NASCAR's decision to make. But that's how I see that situation. If you want to add anything more on there, or what you think, or opinions.
Yeah, I'll
uh,
just add a little bit more. Like you said, Hamlin doing it, or excuse me, Elliott doing it to Hamlin in the 600. Hamlin was, complaining that it's basically just a tantrum, and it's not necessary. I understand tempers are high, and you're not happy, but any right rear hook, no matter the speed, is incredibly dangerous. And that's where I kind of NASCAR loses me a bit with not the suspension. I understand it's a lower speed and it's a road course, but if you have that right rear hook, that should be in a rule book. Make it mandatory one race suspension, or make it that $50,000 and 50-point penalty. Don't be like, oh
it
well,
shouldn't
it
be.
wasn't that dangerous. Let's not give him the suspension. No, make it a mandatory rule. That's where they lose me. But obviously, I'm not in a decision to make those. But that's just my final thoughts on it.
Yeah, Kyle Busch even said right after the race, he goes, it should be in the rule book.
Right.
It's dangerous. Yeah, I think even on this case, I think it was Zane Smith who even piled into Ty Dillon as he's spinning. So not only does the driver have the risk of going into a wall head on, but also getting T-boned while he's going into that wall. So yeah, it's just a bad situation altogether. But moving on from there in the race, we had Bubba Wallace only a lap later end up having to serve a stop and go penalty for doing what? But I talked about track limits here, but of course, course cutting. It's kind of a sore topic, but what's really funny? You know where he got this course penalty?
Turn 5.
Yeah, turn 5. So right where NASCAR was like, we're not going to give out course cutting penalties.
No.
Well, I don't even really know if NASCAR was too sure on what they were planning to do there until AJ asked, "Do you guys know what you're doing here?" And NASCAR was like, "You know what? No more course cutting penalties." So I would love to know how Bubba thought of that, but I'll let you go from there on the race.
Yeah, that was just a funny point. A good thing to add. But speaking of Bubba Wallace, not too much happened after that. We had Kyle Busch kind of bring himself into the mix, which we'll talk about later. But Bubba Wallace ended up winning stage 1, so his first win on a road, or stage win, excuse me, on a road course. So he's clearly improving in the road course department. Close to the end of the stage, we had obviously Elliot come in to fix his toe link problem that he was struggling with from the first lap. So we ran the entire stage with a toe link problem. So if you're ever unsure of how good he is at road courses, just replay that what I just said back. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much it for stage one. If you want to add anything, please go ahead.
Yeah, all I was gonna say is he had a few guys that stage flipped, which is your main reasoning for Bubba Wallace winning the stage. After Wallace, Logano, Cindric, I believe there were a few more, maybe Jones, probably some of your back markers, and Elliott as well. You mentioned with the toe link, will end up bringing SVG back to the lead for the stage 2 restart. That's all I've got there.
Mhm.
But I'll
Yeah.
let you take it.
Yeah, you said SVG and Kyle Busch on his outside was having an incredibly strong day. Obviously, Tyler Reddick up there as well in the second row. But quickly, Kyle Busch, I mean, clears SVG in the first lap, or excuse me, the second lap in stage two. I mean, he was flying and, just having a very strong day. You can always tell his car was strong. He's always been strong at COTA, but he looked incredibly confident running up there next to one of the
Yeah,
best road course races of our generation.
yeah, that car had speed, and you've seen it even the first 2 weeks. That it's a very different Kyle Busch from what we saw last season. And he even has said to his fans in multiple interviews and podcasts or whatever he's been in, where he's saying to his team that they have a win coming this season. I don't know if you even saw, but according to the betting odds, he's the betting favorite going into Vegas.
I did
So
see
I'm
that.
I'm kind of interesting to see how that'll fan out this weekend, and even for races in the future for him the rest of this season. When he's going to get the win, I'm going to say when he's going to get it because I'm very confident that 8 team is going to find their way to victory lane sooner or later this season.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
that's all I've
Um,
got.
yeah, but moving on, from that, not too much later, after Kyle Busch was flying, another track, a shortcutting penalty, NASCAR, but this one makes sense to me. Kyle Larson, turn three, if you missed, he cut the corner pretty heavily, so I understand that one. It was, I mean, he was well over the track limits.
Yeah, it's still the S's. But
Hmm.
this one earlier in the S's, you can't cut this one compared to turn five. Turn five, you're seeing guys completely run a good half a car off the racing line. But this one, he's about a quarter of a car off the racing line. But too bad he can't course cut. That quarter car has got to be at least your two tires have got to be on the racing line. So it's well understood there. He understood it, knew what he did wrong. So kind of threw a wrench into his COTA day there.
Yeah. And then just kind of quickly going through these more penalties. Hamlin shortcutting turn five, dropping him back into 18th. And then this one was not too many people saw, but John Nemechek had a interesting moment. He was past the commit line to pit road and then just swerved his car to the right to get back on track and nearly didn't make it. So he got a line violation penalty. But I just wanted to touch on that a little bit because it was kind of interesting. Maybe a spotter or a crew chief miscommunication there.
Yeah, can't really say what he might have been trying to do there. I'd have to agree with you and say that it had to have been a miscommunication, more of like a pit. Oh, wait, like one
Hmm.
of those things. But I don't know there. That kind of seems like a lot of problems that Legacy has been having. A lot of miscommunications with their spotters to drivers to crew chiefs. So hopefully that's something they can figure out because that's a team that I think has a lot of potential. They can figure it out. We mentioned it the past 2 weeks with Nemechek having a strong start to his season, and these are those mistakes. Even though Nemechek's a fairly young guy, these mistakes that you can't make when when you're in the mix. And I talk about the playoffs basically. To me, the playoffs start as soon as the season starts. Your chase for the playoffs start right away, and every single one of these costly mistakes like that could be a 4 points right there, and that you finish behind those four whole cars, and that can make a difference. So it's just penalties like that you can't afford to make. I don't know. That's my kind of like sixth sense on that one.
Yeah, well, very well said. especially with the team he's on. You know, you're not going to be winning 3, 4 races a year, so every point matters for him. Um, but then we had just had a bunch of pit cycles. You know, all the top guys were pitting, and this is something interesting. Larson had a 32-second pit stop, and which leads me into my point. If you didn't see it, his right front tire completely flew off the car, resulting in a Ryan Preece stage 2 win because of the stage flips. So that was interesting.
Yeah, bringing out the caution right before the end of the stage, and the man that stayed out, Ryan Preece, it fell right into his lap, so he couldn't have asked for a better end of stage 2 for him. He's keeping himself in the mix with the points going through the first 3 weeks, so it's a great job for him there, and it brings us into the start of stage 3 with Michael McDowell starting on the inside and Kyle Busch on the outside. McDowell not pitting or getting caught in the Larson caution cycle there and being forced not to pit. While Kyle Busch, who's on all fresh stuff, is on his outside, and that brings us to a little bit of a crash right off the restart on lap 50. Daniel Suarez trying to get just too much in 6A and spinning himself and getting into right in the racing line, and his rookie teammate making his first ever Cup start. Connor Zilisch had nowhere to go and ends up smoking his teammate and destroying his car by ending up sliding into the outside wall as well. So tough day for the rookie Zilisch there, and Suarez. It's just a tough moment for Trackhouse and all there, as Chastain had already been in the lap 1 incident. But I'll let you make your little point on Zilisch there, because I know you've been chomping at the bit to have your little point on him.
Yeah, and here's where my opinion kind of comes out with Zilisch. You know, you said turn 6A, that kind of trouble spot for them, some of those drivers, you know, some track limit issues. But Suarez's teammate, you know, kind of spins in that trouble spot. And then Zilisch, you know, from my kind of perspective and my view, it kind of just looked not a rookie mistake, but just not really knowing where your car is. It kind of looked to me like he kind of just, you know, was going too fast, kind of bulldozed his way through. Obviously, you know, he might not understand, you know, the entire car and how the braking, you know, how hard to brake there, but he could have had nowhere to go. I kind of just thought it looked to me like he was just kind of bulldozed through and just made a little bit of a rookie mistake, but he was running in top 20, top 15 all day. So good day, just other than that little mistake there.
Yeah, just
But, you know,
previous to. I'm sorry.
you can't really blame him too much. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, I believe just previous to this podcast, we were talking, and I believe the exact phrasing you said was, it looked like he gassed it up when he saw the smoke
It kind of did.
of his teammate. So it ends up being a tough day and being the tough ending to the day for two of the Trackhouse cars, the 99 and Suarez, and Zilisch as well. But after that, we had another restart. Kyle Busch on the inside, Allmendinger on the outside, the road course ringer on the outside, and Busch will clear into turn 1. I'll let you take from there.
Yeah, and Kyle Busch, we're going to have a lot to talk about with him, but just continuing to have a strong car in all 3 stages. So good to see him. Obviously, Christopher Bell is making his appearance now. For feels like every week we've said that, but um, AJ and Shane up there as well. But we just had a little self spin, Bowman all the way in the back of the pack. Nothing really to say there. No caution, but it was in turn 12. Then we see a couple people pit, moving forward into the lap 60 range. And it stays green for a while. You see a lot of some guys getting some more course cutting penalties in that trouble spot in turn 5 and 6, like we were talking about. But kind of towards lap 70 area, we see Kyle Busch and Christopher Bell start their battle. So I'll let you kind of touch a little bit on that if you have anything to say.
Yeah, and just at the start of their battle started with a pit. Bell will go in, SVG takes over the lead, and then as they exit, it really brings into the start for the real battle, the sprint to the end of the race. But unfortunately, their sprint was interrupted by a mistake by one driver, the 11 driver. Denny Hamlin locks up the brakes going into turn 6 and cleans out the 3 car and Austin Dillon. This was quite an interesting crash to see from the broadcast. but it didn't really seem like the 11 had any intent on stopping, which clearly he did. He brakes were locked up. He just really hit his brakes way too late. The 3 was there, who ends up becoming the 11's brake. The 3 gets gravel trapped, and there we were with another caution.
Yep, and guess where in that 6A trouble spot, like I keep talking about, obviously it didn't matter too much for any, significant lead changes, but Hamlin already has previous damage to that one tire and just locked him up and took out the 3 with him who got stuck in the gravel. And obviously Austin Dillon, being that, he's competitive, but he took it to social media afterwards and made some comments. If you want to look up that, you can. But it's a road course accident. It's not really anyone's fault. You can pin the blame on Hamlin all you want, but it's just a typical road course accident.
Yeah, mistakes happen. That you're running 95 laps of this. How many turns you got per lap? What is it? It's a 19 turn layout with the 8 they cut out, so 11 or 12 or maybe even 13. My math could be off here. But you run 13 times 95, you do the math. Austin Dillon, if you want to do the math and see how many turns you're doing that race and to not make one mistake, Hamlin just happens to make his mistake and Austin Dillon is there in perfect position to act as his human brake. So it's just kind of wrong spot or wrong place, wrong time for Dylan, and it's definitely something that can make you hot when you're having a solid day. You're running top 20, and you just kind of get cleaned out and gravel trapped, and your day is not over, but in other words, metaphorically over, because you're restarting practically dead last after being gravel trapped and spun out with only about 10 laps to go. So it's tough stuff for him there. But following that, it really allowed for the battle up front to unwind. I'll let you cover that.
Right. Good segue into that. So just keep an eye on these 3 names I'm about to name: Bush, Bell, and Byron. So the 3 Bs, if you want to put it that way, but we are going to be talking about these guys a lot. So Kyle Busch obviously off the restart. We only have just above 10 laps to go. So this is where the drivers are focused and locked in. So Bush just had about 5/10 of a lead over Bell, and then Byron kind of making a second and a half off those two. So these guys are going to be up here for a while, pretty much till the end of the race. Um, so this is where we saw the Bush and Bell battle. So obviously Bush and Christopher Bell had a little bit of an incident these past couple years at COTA. Last year, Bell just made a mistake into turn 1 on the final lap and took out Bush, and Bush had some words for him on pit road afterwards. So you saw Bell racing incredibly clean but hard with him, which is just very good to see. So I'll let you comment a little bit on that battle.
Yeah, it's a great battle. I believe it was Boyer or maybe even Harvick that mentioned after the race. He goes, these are the cleanest road course racers that we've seen so far since the next gen car came out a couple of years ago. You saw barely any contact for the most part. That there was no really pushing. It was kind of very respectful. It was almost a little like F1 in my opinion. As a NASCAR fan, I'd kind of like to see a little more contact, but you don't need guys wrecking each other and then getting mad at each other. And then you have feud starting in the 3rd week of a 36-week season. So you absolutely see where the drivers are coming from, and especially Bell. This poor kid's got PTSD from last year after seeing Kyle Busch, whatever he is, 6'1", 6'2", getting up in this little kid's face. It's
Yeah.
it's kind of easy for Bell to say, "Oh, I'm gonna make sure I race him a lot cleaner this time." But as they were tracking down, or as they were tracking each other down, Byron will close in third. The gap was now down to just below 3/4 of a second, coming in on the 2 leaders. Kyle Busch, the leader at the time, but Bell pressing hard with about 5 laps to go.
Right. And as we saw, kind of nearing, just under 5 to go, Bell overshot turn 1, and he went out of his way to purposely miss Bush. So he definitely remembered what Bush said to him last year, and he did not want to wreck him again because that would not be a good chat afterwards. But Byron, patiently waiting, takes over second, but is quickly dropped back down to third. So, good stuff from Bell, just hard, clean racing, and obviously you're going to have a contact there as we get into these last 2 laps, but, kind of turn 15 area, 14, 15 is where you see Bell really make his push to try to win and making some hard contact, but clean. And you see Byron patiently waiting in third. But this is where we see Bush's car and Bush's just hardware really start to fall off.
Yeah, that car for the 8 team, it's really a shame. They had such a great car all day, but it just seemed to turn off in the last 2 or 3 laps. He would end up falling down to a 5th place finish, allowing for Tyler Reddick to sneak up to the previous William Byron third, as Byron would take over second, and Byron would take shots at Bell. He had, I believe, 2 or 3 chances in that final lap or two to have a chance at Bell, but he was very respectful to him and kind of sat behind him, knowing he already had a win and didn't need to cause any more controversy there, making the 20 team mad at him for the future. So Byron will eventually bring it home second, while Chris Bell and that 20 team for Joe Gibbs Racing Toyotas will bring it home up front and in first at the Circuit of the Americas.
Yep, great points there to close off the race. Bell goes back to back. Um, Byron in second. So, and obviously Reddick, who we haven't covered too much in State Tree, just quietly gets his gets a podium third place finish there. But and also almost forgot this, Chase Elliott. Remember him from all the way in lap one? Well, he rebounds to finish fourth. So just incredible stuff from him
Yeah,
to
yeah.
keep
How
his
the heck did he
composure.
do that? Yeah, I believe this is a little tough for me to not get biased on, as it was with you and Blaney last week. But Elliot, this is just great driving. I believe it was 19th that he was at with starting after the restart, the Hamlin Dillon contact restart. So he had, I believe, 9 laps there to get up 10 spots or whatever it was, even more than that. So it's I believe it was 15 actually. So just phenomenal racing there from Elliott, and great work by that 9 team to get that car fixed after turn 1, after being in basically last. So I got to give a lot of credit to my boy Chase there. So just a great day from him all around.
Yeah, and Kyle Busch, finishes fifth. With being as competitive he is, I'm sure he's not too proud of that fifth place finish. But any Kyle Busch fans out there, this is, obviously going to be upset. But just a great finish from him. But you want that one badly,
Yeah,
and he wants to
and
get
that
himself
win's
in the
coming.
playoffs. Yeah,
It's
it
coming.
is coming. I am not worried about that at all.
Yeah, I wouldn't be. He'll have plenty more chances. That 8 car shines at just about any track on the schedule. You've been seeing him up there at super speedways now. He can compete at road courses,
Mhm.
and of course, anyone who's been a part of NASCAR for a little bit, that he can always compete at intermediate. So
All
it'll be
right.
really fun watching that 8 car compete at every track, basically for the rest of the year. You would hope.
Right. And I guess I'll continue this segue as our final ending point. Just a couple of drivers that I want to note that had incredible days that you don't see too often in the top 10. Gregson, eighth place finish. Gilliland with a 10th, and Michael McDowell and Hocevar in the top 15. So Spire really pushing as maybe a potential playoff contender. Who knows? We're a bit early to say, but great finishes from those guys overall. So
Yeah,
any
it's
final
great
points
work.
from you?
Yeah, I've got a bit more. Gregson and Bowman, your 8th and 9th place finishers. Those were both cars that were actually spun out during that race. So it's a great rebound from both of them. Gilliland had damage in turn 1 on the race. McDowell got caught on a bad pit cycle. He was 6 laps down uh, for sake last week in Atlanta. These are just guys that have been looking for finishes like this, and it just happened to kind of fall in their laps, and they got these great finishes here at COTA. But someone I wanted to mention that I believe we skipped out on last week in our Atlanta recap, but Chase
Mhm.
Briscoe finishing 14th. He's going to need about 100 more points than everyone else if he wants to make playoffs, because at Daytona, that 19 car had a modified spoiler and was penalized after their phenomenal qualifying run. So no wonder Toyota had all that speed. But he will be fighting the rest of the season with a 100-point penalty after a legal car modification for the Daytona 500. But anyway, breaking away from Briscoe, you see a few more good finishes out of, you got Herps in the 35 and 17th. Stenhouse in the 47 and 18th. Good finishes for both of those non-road course ringers. And, Riley's a young guy, so it's great to see him finishing up there. And Bubba Wallace, who after his stage win brings it home 20th. Hamlin with all that damage, 21st. So a few more great finishes there. And then you got a list of Fords and then some of your back markers with eventually Connor Zilisch in dead last. What a shame for his first ever Cup start. Absolutely totaled. But that's all I've got on the recap there.
Yep. Well, thank you all for listening to our COTA recap. The Phoenix recap will be uploaded or recorded and uploaded sometime in the future, so stay tuned for that. And we thank you all for following the podcast. Thanks for all the support so far, and keep listening because more episodes to come.
Yep, thanks for stopping by, guys.